All right, so let's start looking at federalism then. Okay. All right, so what is federalism? Okay, it is a division of power so that a central government somewhere, we call it the national or federal government at this point, has power, and some sort of smaller subdivisional governments. In the United States, that's our state governments, have power. Okay, so both national and state governments have power in this shared, in this system of shared power. Okay, that's what federalism is. There are several types. The best and most important to remember are dual federalism in the top left and marble cake federalism in the bottom left. Right? Dual federalism. That's the idea that there's certain things the national government can do and certain things the states can do, and it's called layer cake federalism because their two layers are separate. The national government's layers are on top and then the state government's layers are on bottom, but they don't mix at all. Okay, marble cake federalism is like a marble cake, so they're all mixed together. It's a version of, if you look at it, it's a version of that one on the bottom right, cooperative federalism. The federal and the state governments pretty much work together. Okay, they don't have, they're not separate. It's not like the top right, competitive federalism, where the governments are in competition with each other. They're working together. Marble cake or cooperative federalism is really what we have today, where the powers are more mixed. Dual federalism is more something that we had prior to the New Deal. Okay, and that's like it says here. So prior to the 1930s, it was layer cake, clearly defined powers. National government did this, state governments did this. But after the New Deal, began this more marble cake, this mixed. The national government really got involved more with what state governments could do, mostly because of money, because the national government was paying for it. And so that's what we call that cooperative federalism. So you can remember it either way, marble cake or cooperative, it's really no difference. And in this case, the national and state governments cooperate with each other to provide services. Okay, it does make the national government much more powerful now than they were before because they're involved in a lot of stuff that the Constitution didn't have them involved in prior to that, like education is one big one. Okay, so alternatives. You've heard of these other systems. So we have the federal system on the top. There's also a confederation or confederal system, like the Confederate States of America. And that's where the power's in the states, and then unitary, which is what Great Britain has, and that's where all the authorities in the central government. States in the United States are unitary in regard to local government. Local governments derive their power because these state governments give them power. The state governments can take that power back. In a unitary system like Great Britain, whatever individual subdivisional governments they have, that they can lose their power. In the federal system, they cannot because it's constitutionally guaranteed power. All right, so in federalism and confederation, you just see another picture of it there, so you get an idea. The Articles of Confederation obviously was a confederal system, and then we went to this federal system once we got to the Constitution. So why federalism? What are some of the reasons for it? The pluses and the minuses. So federalism, it protects liberty. It checks tyranny. That word tyranny mean like a tyrannical system would be led by a tyrant, a dictator. Okay. So in the federal system, by splitting the power between the national and the state governments, the power split, that separation of powers, checks and balances, all that good stuff that we've been talking about. Unity without uniformity. So you have these groups combined, but there are these 50 state governments, so they don't have to do everything the same. What Alaska needs isn't the same thing as what Georgia needs. And so for the national government just to do the same thing for everybody wouldn't make sense. And that kind of goes in this next one, encourages experimentation. Some people call the states laboratories of democracy. Think about something like the states that have legalized marijuana. Rather than the whole country doing that all at once, individual states doing it can sit there and see whether it's something that works or not, rather than everyone doing it all at once and seeing that it doesn't work. Think of prohibition, where they changed the Constitution where alcohol was outlawed in the entire country. And so that's, those are the two different things, ways of going about something there. And that's why federalism works so well, is let states try it out first. So trains and creates opportunities for future national leaders. A lot of governors become president, or at least run for president. And it keeps the government closer to the people. If we didn't have state governments or local governments, we'd just be dealing with the people in Washington, and we wouldn't have as much the government wouldn't have as much accountability. So disadvantages: it's difficult to respond quickly to national problems. Think of Hurricane Katrina. The problem that occurred there is the state government thought that the national government was going to deal with it. The national government thought the state government was going to deal with it, and so neither moved quickly enough to actually handle it properly. And if we had a unitary system, they would have known exactly who should have dealt with it, or confederal, known exactly who to deal with it. So that is a problem. I know I just mentioned the other page talking about how it keeps it makes the people more accountable, and it's also difficult for voters to hold their elected officials accountable because there's just so many. There are so many elected officials now, and so many elections, and a lot of times it leads to the fact that people don't vote in a lot of the elections, and so they just don't really care, and so they're not really holding the people accountable. It leads to conflict. Obviously, national versus state governments. Think of this past summer with the Supreme Court decision over gay marriage. And it creates redundancies and inefficiencies. I mean, state governments will do something that the federal government's already doing, or the federal government will do something the state governments can do better. And so it just, it makes it's a system that's less efficient because there are more people trying to do things rather than just having one person or one government take care of all the situations, all the problems that occur. You see, there's just a breakdown of how many different governments there are in the United States. Obviously, the top two are the easiest ones to see, but it's interesting to see just how many other governments there are. There's a total of almost 88,000 governments in the United States. It's pretty crazy to think about. But the only ones we're really going to worry about are the top two, obviously. Okay, I'm going to come back in another video and talk about the powers here all together in one, because otherwise I'm going to be cut off in the middle of this one.